Big fluff.
Hi.
Scared me.
What are you doing?
Sticks for marshmallows, you know. But those bees.
Wasps. Yellow jackets. Genus Vespula.
They all sting.
These won't bother you unless you bother them. Wasps are different. They're territorial and they're social.
Social? Like they want to be friends?
Like they attack in groups.
We should leave.
Slowly. Slowly.
Slowly.
Hey everybody, I'm Joel Murphy.
And I'm Andy McIntyre.
And this is Silver Linings Playback, the podcast where we watch maligned movies and we find their silver linings.
And it's still February, and we are still watching bad, stalker, creepy romance movies. And I said it last week, but I'll say it this week. This might be the baddest, stalkerist, creepiest one that we've done yet. It is the MTV Movie Award winning 1993's The Crush. And to talk about it, we have returning to the show with an absolutely dumbfounded and stunned look on her face after hearing that news. Sophie Strauss, welcome back. We're sorry.
Wait, it won an award?
It won an MTV Movie Award. It won 2 MTV Movie Awards, I think. That I think Alicia Silverstone won Best Breakthrough Performance and Best Villain.
Okay. Ooh. You know, I love Alicia.
Don't we all?
Except for her RFK Jr. stuff. But
yeah, there's some caveats for sure.
There's some caveats, but we love her.
But from 1993 to 1998, we all love Alicia Silverstone.
Yes. Yeah.
She's
Unimpeachable.
literally a child. But what could we say negative about her?
Well, yeah. Yeah. So I now that Andy has said the breakthrough thing and you've said that, just to set the stage, if people aren't aware, this is the first film she was ever in. I believe she was 15 when she was cast in this movie.
Playing a 14-year-old.
Yes.
16.
16.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
She was a ripe 16.
Right. And got emancipated to make this movie.
So she didn't have to. So the studio didn't have to obey child labor laws.
Which is a good start. You know that you're in good hands when they want you to divorce your parents so you don't have to follow child labor laws to make a movie. That's already a good starting place. Yeah, so it's The Crush. And then the other thing that we should talk about that I did get a message from Sophie, so I know that you're already aware of this, as is Andy. The screenwriter says this is based on a true story. So he says that he was the guy in this movie, that he rented a house and there was a teenage girl that became obsessed with him, according to him, and keyed his car. And he actually named the character originally after the real person who then sued him. So then they had to change the name to Adrian in this movie because he lost the lawsuit to use the actual name. So that's also our starting point for this.
To be clear, the lawsuit. Oh, I think am I frozen or is Andy frozen?
I think Andy's frozen because I still see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just gonna move on. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think it was like he didn't get sued until after it came out. So in the theatrical release, it was still her name, I think Darian or whatever. And then in the streaming and like subsequent releases on DVD and whatever, they had to ADR in Adrian, which is then if you know that watching it, every time her name is said, you see the mismatch.
Yes. And yeah, apparently Kurtwood Smith was upset because they didn't tell the actors they were dubbing it. They just hired people
He's like, I
to
would have come
done
in.
Yeah, he was like, I would have done it. Like, I don't know why you didn't reach out. But yeah, so the original theatrical release had the name, then the lawsuit happened, and then now it is Adrian. All of that is a weird place to start. And I guess since we're starting there, there's a Letterboxd review that I flagged for this moment that I'm just going to read by someone named Chase Heinrich, who wrote, "It's super clear to everyone else that this is a struggling writer dude was trying to break into Hollywood and move into a rich family's guest house where he started perving on their teenage daughter, then got busted for perving on their teenage daughter and was kicked out. So he wrote a movie where he was totally innocent and she came on to him, right? That's clear."
Yeah, that's pretty, like, whether perving or grooming.
The thing that's so crazy to me about that, and I feel like there's a couple other examples of this throughout history, is like, you know, that if this is the writer-director's flattering self-image version of this story, where he's not the perpetrator but is the victim, like, this is his point of view, and he's still an unbelievably big perv who is actively lusting after this girl, and that's his good, like, putting himself in a good light fictional version of it, then I cannot imagine what transpired in the real version.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. Because yes, in his version, in the Hollywood version, he still breaks into her room at one point and hides in a closet and like pervs on her, watches her like get out of the shower.
He tells her, like, off the bat that he's, if she were 10 years older, and then also very weirdly just allows this girl and her friend to come hang, like, just visit and chat. He like, yeah, we should all, they're just hanging out. Like, naturally, a 14-year-old girl, if you're a 28-year-old guy and a 14-year-old girl comes into your home unannounced, you should hang out.
Right. Instead of like going to her parents and being like, hey, I'm renting this room. This makes me uncomfortable. Can you just talk to her and tell her not to just pop by? You know, like, yeah, no, he does everything wrong. He kisses her at one point early in the movie. Like, he's as creepy as a person could be. And yeah, as to you said, like what you said, in his version, that is the, like, you know, the best case scenario for how he's
the
presented.
one where he's supposed to look like a good guy. He looks like
Right.
a monster.
Yes.
A total monster.
And then, yeah, the other
Played
thing
charmingly
too,
by Cary Elwes.
yeah, it was dragged into this for some reason.
I read like I read a bunch of like reviews, both like from the time and also like afterwards. And it does seem like this is a year that really like put his career in the toilet.
Yeah.
That was sort of like the retrospective, was like he made some very weird choices this particular year. And this probably at the top of the list. And it was like, I don't know if you bounce back. I mean, you know, if you think
He did
about
this in
like,
Men in Tights. So two extremes.
That's right. Two extremes. You're like, what's he trying to say about himself? Like, what is the career he wants?
But also interesting that if this killed his career, that it clearly did still launch Alicia Silverstone's, although arguably probably anything would have. Like, that she was just going to be discovered. I think I read that she was discovered from just modeling headshots, that like they just, you know, she was always going to be in a stack of headshots and discovered by someone, and probably still do Clueless, which is always what was going to be what we all know and love her from, regardless of this otherwise probably forgotten movie, if not for it being her like movie that launched her career.
Yeah, I think the Aerosmith videos and Clueless and all of that were pretty inevitable for Alicia.
Yes. Yeah. Kurtwood Smith unfazed by this, I would imagine. Just fine, ultimately.
Just another day at the office for Kurtwood Smith.
Yeah.
And
but yeah,
a young Amber Benson for our Buffy heads.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. Molly did have that when we were watching it, where like the IMDb flew out and she verified that in real time.
It's indeed Faith.
Yeah. So that definitely did happen.
No.
No. Tara, come on.
That's right. Yes, who was in a relationship with
tragic
Willow.
in a relationship. Yes,
Tragic relationship
Willow's
with
gay
Willow.
girlfriend. Tragic relationship.
Yeah. Willow, of course, Allison Hannigan. So
Yes.
just if people are tracking at home. But yeah. Yes. Hopefully, now we have a reboot coming too. I've seen that it's apparently in the works. So, okay.
Very
but
exciting.
so we've kind of set the stage a little bit. And then I think the thing that we need to probably talk about next is, so allegedly based on real events, starts out pretty normal. Again, guy not discouraging the 14-year-old from hanging out with him, but everything feels pretty grounded in the beginning. Like, she's getting comfortable there. She's editing. She's a better writer than him, which is a detail that I love in this movie, that she's like fixing his work and everything's kind of normal. She's a little jealous of the, age appropriate woman that he's dating. And then
The true hero of the film.
Yes. And then the movie completely becomes unhinged in the last third of it and becomes a much sillier, more ridiculous movie involving attempted wasp murders and people getting
Which I think
punched.
also those are just bees. I'm like pretty sure those aren't even wasps.
I think it
Those
was
are
just bees.
Yeah. Also, just what a Rube Goldberg attempted killing that happens of the age appropriate girlfriend is a photographer for the same newspaper that he works for. She's in the dark room. She's developing film, and Alicia Silverstone's character Adrian tapes the nest to
Puts
a
the nest in a
vent.
bag and tapes the bag to a vent, and then the bees flood the dark room, attacking Amy, the age appropriate girlfriend played by Jennifer Rubin.
Yeah, who then like smashes a window to survive. She's not allergic to bees or anything, so it's just a normal wasp attack in an enclosed area. But that happens. She does key the car, and then there's a third act fight on the we haven't yet mentioned carousel that is built in the attic.
What a weird freaking set piece.
Yeah.
Because one, who has an attic big enough for a carousel in the world, let alone in wherever this movie takes place?
Yeah. And that the weight can support it. It seems like it would be too heavy for the attic.
Nothing about the attic carousel makes sense. That he found a carousel that's the perfect size for the attic. That he's like, I'll make this for my daughter. And then she doesn't like it, so he just keeps it. Because now it's too heavy to disassemble.
I think what we're saying is it was for him. It was never for her.
Kurtwood is a big carousel guy. Like, let's be honest here.
Yeah. So, so there's a big fight there, and they do there's a Fresh Prince, like when they used to throw DJ Jazzy Jeff across the room shot of Alicia Silverstone. She gets punched, and then like a doll flies across the room in the like corniest of shots that's supposed to be dramatic, as she's like attacking her own dad with a pipe, I want to say.
Some sort of blunt object.
Yeah. Which up until that point, she was doing pretty well at destroying his life. And she really lost it in the fourth quarter. Like, she had him.
Yeah,
like, she had him
the
dead
hubris
to
took
rights.
over.
Yeah, absolutely dead to rights. Like, he had lost his job. She had accused him of assaulting her. Like, he was done. And then she shows up at the house to attack him because her friend, Willow's girlfriend, decides to help him.
For no reason other than Alicia Silverstone's Darian is bad.
Well, nothing is really motivated. Like, he is immediately, like, there's no build up to anything. We're just, it manages to be both slow and everything happens very fast and for no reason.
Right. Yeah, nothing happens and then everything happens. Like, for 2/3 of the movie, it's just a kind of breezy, this girl is interested in him. He's not really shooing her away. And he's also trying to date the girl from work. And then the last act is everything that could possibly happen.
Yeah, it's
all
kind
at
of this
once.
subtle Lolita-esque type thing where it's gross and bad, but not crazy. And then it's crazy.
Well, it's also too like she goes to the police and she gets him arrested. But again, to our point about this is the best case for this guy, she does that because he does grab her and slam her against a wall too. Like he does get physical with a 14-year-old because she shows up at a work function.
Also, it's like, he gets fired, but also by his own admission, he's like a bad writer who also seems to often forget to go to work. Like there's a scene later, like after a lot of the shit has hit the fan, he's like sitting on the couch in like the apartment he shares with the girlfriend who's too good for him, the Amy. And she walks in and is like, "Oh, where were you? We missed you at work today." And he's like, "Oh," and it's like,
don't worry, I lied that you're doing your job well.
Yeah, like very, very bad at his job. And she seems great. She deserves a lot better. She's beautiful.
She is a good photographer. When she's attacked by the wasps or bees, that photo, like the photos that are being developed are good. She's clearly a good photographer.
And she's also the only person who says anything of any sense, which is like the first time she meets Alicia Silverstone's character, she goes, I don't know exactly, she was just like, "You have to draw the line. You're the adult."
It's like she has a crush on you. I've been her before. You need to stop this.
Yes. She literally says like the perfect thing. And she's written relatively flatteringly, so it's not like she's supposed to be some nag, but you definitely get the sense that like if this is something based on a true story with the director, either that was like some completely exhausted low-down female studio executive who was like, "Please have some woman say this somewhere," or a woman he knows said something like that to him, and he to this day doesn't really know what it means, but he felt that it added tension.
Well, to your second part, your second theory, the thing that I did read about when he said that this was a real thing, he said his wife was the one who he was looking for an idea for a script to write. And his wife was like, "You should write about that thing about the girl that you live." So I think that kind of goes to your theory of like it. I don't know if he was with his wife at the time, but she seems definitely who the character is based on. That probably said that to him.
It's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Even for that era, and it's sort of like, you think about these old movies, and obviously, and this is maybe going to be relevant if we, talk a little bit about the clothing and costuming and wardrobe, etc. But this is obviously very stylistically referencing Lolita, like the 60s movie specifically. But it's my understanding that movie and also things like of the time, like Rebecca, where you would have these kind of like dashing movie stars who had a career and a sort of persona as a star to protect beyond just what was kind of like acceptable as a film, but also like, what do we want to see this guy do? And what could he like recover from? Where like some of what Humbert does in the film does not go as far as the book, right? Like and similarly, like I think in Rebecca, no Rebecca spoilers, spoiler alert if you've
Spoiler
never
for
read
a 70-year-old movie and 90-year-old book.
But I believe it was that like they couldn't have Laurence Olivier, like, in the book, it's like, isn't it him who like had kind of pushed her or whatever, not to call us back to Cruella, and that like the sort over the cliff or whatever.
Very clearly like a villain in the book. Yeah.
Right. Or maybe it was in a boat. Like maybe he kills her in a boat. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I read Rebecca, but essentially there is like, at the end of it, we learn that like he ultimately is the one who killed the woman who she can't compare to, this Rebecca. And in the movie, they were like, Laurence Olivier's people were basically like, "Nope, I could be botching that lore, but I'm like pretty sure it's some version of that, which was just, they were like, he couldn't recover. We don't want to see Laurence Olivier do that. And I like that you like do this sort of like spin on Lolita, where like it's supposed to sort of be the horror vindication of the guy writing it. And we're like, no, we're going to make him as he's a lech.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's because there's like the 60s Lolita, but then I think shortly after this, they remade Lolita with Dominique Swain, and that movie didn't get it either.
No, and if you read some of the reviews of the time of The Crush, it's very lumped in with that remake of Lolita, which instead of it being at all tied to like what Nabokov was going for, you instead end up just in this like era of like the teen seductress. Like, you know, the 90s and early aughts are like the peak of that. And it was just sort of like, young girls are hot.
Right.
Right,
yeah.
fellas? Like,
well, and
No.
you can definitely
No.
you can definitely see that of like also not helping his case of the writer director is like he films an actual 16-year-old in that way, like in a very lecherous way.
It is like the
Yeah.
epitome of the grossest version of the male gaze. 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's so vile.
Yeah.
it
like,
was vile.
I don't know that there's a better word to describe it, because like teenagers are gross. Like, I don't know if you've met many, but they're awful. And just like I, as a high school teacher, I work with teenagers day in, day out. They're vile human beings, and they're figuring everything out, and it's gross and disgusting and ew, just ew.
Yeah, I honestly can't think of anything worse than like being in my home and being bothered by a 14-year-old that just pops by. Like, honestly,
I don't let them in
leave
my
me
room.
alone. Right.
Unless I have to, because that's the period they're supposed to be there. Like, it's
right.
No one in their right mind wants that.
No.
I think there's also this thing, which is like, because my husband also works with like adolescents, and this has been, you know, he's a very handsome man. There's a reason I married him. And
well, of course,
it's been really interesting. It's been very interesting talking to him about contending with, you know, not anything like this, but that like in some ways, essentially it is like normal for young, like teenagers to have feelings for adults. Like, you are figuring yourself out, you are projecting yourself, you are trying to grow up. They are figures of authority, not even authority, figures of like wholeness to you, right? In these moments. And often they are guides and feel like safety, or there's so many things, and you're surrounded by adults, and it is like very organic for people who are minors to have these sort of like projected in a like quote unquote inappropriate feelings. But the thing is, we almost always know how to like metabolize that when it's like a teenage boy. You know, you think of like the American Pies, not that I'm like, that's a really good example of like how to process it, but that
a
like
healthy adult-child relationship.
Yeah. No, but just like as a culture, we're like comfortable parsing out that like teen boys are allowed to be sexual and have sexuality. That is not a threat, except maybe, I mean, of course, the irony is it's totally a threat, but
right.
It's not hard for us to understand that might be like a normal and okay, in fact, if not healthy thing for them to feel, and that it can kind of be something that like gets shot out into the void, to, you know what I mean? Like that it may not, they can sort of lust and lech, and it can go nowhere sort of safely, and that there's nothing wrong with them for feeling that. And that there's like so few depictions of teen girl sexuality where it's either like not a joke because the girl is not conventionally attractive, or a threat, like or a prize, that it's basically always something to be sort of like she needs to be protected, or she's so sexy and seductive that she's actually like an object, a sex object. And you realize that we just like there's so few examples of like movies or anything really like culture that presents like a teen girl having sexual feelings in a way that where she's allowed to like safely have those feelings without it being like preyed upon or squashed.
Yeah, like I think Edge of 17 is one of the rare examples of a movie that I think kind of addresses it in a way that has a bit of with Haley Steinfeld and is it Thomas Hayden Church? It might be Thomas Hayden Church. I can't remember, but I could be mixing that up with Thomas Hayden Church and Easy A, which is another one I think does an okay job of addressing teenage girl sexuality in a somewhat healthy way compared to, you know, the coquettish Lolita character that is so common in everything else. But yeah, there just aren't a lot of those examples. And even like within the last 5 years, SNL has done sketches about like the teen boys that sleep with their teacher, and like all the courtroom guys are like, nice. You know, like that's the joke. Like that's not a bygone thing from 30 years ago. It's 5 years ago. You know, it's not that long ago. Yeah. And so it's definitely something that it's one of the many gross double standards that exist in American sexuality.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie doesn't do any favors to dispelling any of those things.
Well, no, you realize like go for it.
I was just going to say, the weird thing is, I think it started out like on a footing that felt like it could have, and then lost it of just like, again, the age appropriate girlfriend saying like, it's up to you to like set the like there was a correct message in there at the beginning, but then it went like, no, actually she's crazy. And so it's fine. Like she's just unstable. So she's the problem versus like the beginning was probably accidentally actually holding him accountable and making it clear that like he was failing. But then it, you know, was like, no, actually I'm right, you know, which is unfortunate.
And I think there was probably a way to do both, because if he successfully establishes the boundary, there's no movie.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it doesn't, and not in like, oh, it's interesting and playing in a gray area. It's like, it doesn't decide. And so you have a guy who never actually tries to set right. He is like absolutely interested in her. And then also it's like, we don't really know why. He's very, very familiar with her in a way that's completely inappropriate. And then also manages to still have this girlfriend. And she's the villain. And also like at the end, seemingly this is just like a thing she does for no reason. Like she's set her sights on her next target. Like,
which is her therapist.
It's just, as opposed to like being a teenage girl where like a good looking guy who is paying attention to you and making you feel special has moved into your backyard, and his job would have been to have a boundary. And instead he's making you feel special and then is feeling conflicted about it and making you feel like it's your fault, which is what's happening.
Yeah. Yes. There's probably a much better, safer movie where the movie makes a very clear decision that Cary Elwes is the villain and not Alicia Silverstone. But then it wouldn't be the creepy stalker movie that was so popular at the time. And that's not that that's good, but that's what it is.
Have you guys seen Diary of a Teenage Girl?
Yes. Yeah.
It's also, so I love, that's like one of my favorite movies, and it's based on a graphic novel which is written by Phoebe Glockner, and it's the graphic novel is based on her actual diary from when she was 15, and it covers an extremely similar topic. And by the way, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, why isn't this like campy like horror porn movie the same as like a prestige indie movie? Like, obviously I can recognize that's not the point of this movie. I'm not like asking this to be some didactic like beacon of humanity, but it's just like, it's also just like a really bad movie.
Yeah.
But I do think like one of the reasons that Diary of a Teenage Girl resonated so intensely with me was I feel like maybe I haven't actually seen Edge of 17, but like similarly, but unlike that, she's contending with a reality closer to this, which is that the adults in her life are not drawing those boundaries. And she has a journey filled with agency. And it's heavy, but it's light and hopeful and beautiful. And it's like all her own. And, I just sort of feel like, I think what you realize is this movie is very, very egregiously bad, but actually a lot of movies that are pretty good and that are not as overtly disgusting as this from like this movie for like the next 20 years do an almost equally bad job unpacking this topic. It's just that they're like better written.
Right.
Well, yeah. And there's a version of this movie where the Cary Elwes character establishes a boundary and Alicia Silverstone is clearly the villain. And that's the campy, silly horror thriller movie that I think they set out to make that like wouldn't have been incredibly misogynistic at the same time. That is the version that, probably should have been made and has been made, I think, in other instances. But yeah, this movie, because clearly this was, again, based on a true story of Alan Shapiro not understanding what a creep he was.
Right. Which I think the kind of maybe, Sophie, what you're getting at too is like, understandably, the real person this is based on sued to have their name taken out, doesn't want to be involved. But like, I'd be curious if she wrote a screenplay, what that would look like. What her version of this was like is probably, I would imagine, closer to the truth and closer to an adult looking back at being 14.
Right. And her probably, like immaturely keying the car probably did happen.
Probably, yeah.
But like that was because of her not knowing how to process dealing with this gross man rather than her being a crazy stalker.
Yes.
The thing is, if she wrote this exact movie word for word, he would still be the villain. There's no version of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where he's
dead on,
not
100%.
the villain.
Right. Yeah. No, that is an excellent point. 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is,
exactly.
of course, almost just the hubris of him writing it. And then not just writing it, but then also proudly declaring that it's true. That like he wants you to know. And using her actual name.
So embarrassing.
Yeah.
So embarrassing.
Yes.
And he's so clueless.
So should we talk a little bit about the clothes?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's
so that your time wasn't completely wasted. Yes.
So, okay, there's no, I wouldn't say that there's a silver lining because it's bad. But if it were a different movie that was like doing something cooler with this topic, it is very, very overtly referencing Lolita.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very overtly. Like, the movie poster is her with red pouty lips, and they're not heart-shaped sunglasses, but they're sort of like very like juvenile, like sort of coquettish cat eye sunglasses.
Right. It's the big
She's
plastic
not licking
rims
she's not licking a lollipop. She's blonde. She's not like licking a lollipop in the cover, but she is in like in other parts of the film. And all of her outfits are really sort of like, there's the little tied up. I mean, there's a really deep and sort of like complicated community around like Lolita core, which is like really quite interesting actually, because there's the sort of like Tumblr Lana Del Rey era of it that really like romanticizes the actual thing that Lolita core is. And then there's this sort of like largely like very popular, for example, like in Japan, Lolita core that is almost a little bit more like Little Bo Peep, that like rejects having anything to really do with like the Lolita age gap, romanticizing youth and these kinds of like inappropriate relationships. And it's really kind of specifically about this like hyper feminine style. But a lot of the outfits and how they look in the movie are like direct references to like I would say mostly to the like Stanley Kubrick, what is it, 55? Is that one? Or no, the book is 55, the film is 62.
Yeah.
To that movie. And like a lot of the silhouettes are very sort of like 60s high-waisted shorts, little tied up blouses, like it's leaning on all of these garments that communicate youth, shorts, rollerblades, things like that. And then styling them in this very sort of like revealing way on a literal child. And this sort of very similar, right? The older man who comes to stay, who has a kind of literary, academic, respectable style. He's in his, drapey, tucked in blouse and horn rim glasses, to really sort of set him up as this thoughtful, gentle man, somebody who feels safe.
Well, yeah, I think that Cary Elwes is as much channeling Humbert as Alicia Silverstone is Lolita. Like this movie is one thing this movie sure ain't is subtle.
Yeah.
Weirdly grounded for the first 2/3, but not subtle.
No. I am, Sophie, I'm curious, by the way, like if you saw or if you have thoughts on, so apparently Jennifer Rubin, the clothes that she's wearing in the movie are her own, that apparently the costume designer liked her style and just like picked her actual clothes to put on her.
I really loved her style. I thought that character, I was like, get her out of here. She's too good. All of it. Get her out of here. Like her clothes are too cool. Her clothes also feel almost out of place in how of a time they are. Like everybody else's clothes feel like they have that kind of like cinematic quote unquote timelessness. You're not seeing logos. You're not seeing, anything that feels like particularly trendy. I mean, obviously some of the silhouettes are of a moment, but in that way where you could probably place it almost anytime, anywhere. And then her clothes, she's in like little bucket hats and big graphic t-shirts and shorts and tube socks. And, I wish I trusted this movie enough to be like, that's intentional in a way that is like, she's our voice, she's our lens in, she's us today seeing how fucked up this is. But I really just honestly think that they were like, she's got cool clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the amount of thought that was put into it. You put more thought, substantially more thought in analyzing what it could have been than they did in actually doing it.
Yeah. I imagine they just took stills from Lolita and were just like, I don't know this. Like that's what he should wear without like
It's funny because I think also knowing that the Lolita remake would come out later, like 4 years later or something. I wouldn't actually be surprised if some of how they style Lolita in the 1997 remake with Jeremy Irons is so like, because it's quite its own thing. It's a lot more sort of like she does these almost like milkmaid braids and these very roughly off the shoulder tops that again feel like they're supposed to feel sort of vintage, but it's quite different from the original Lolita film in terms of the silhouettes. They're much more kind of like roughly and like sugary sweet, whereas there was like a kind of simplicity to the 1962 film, and the costumes in The Crush are much closer to the original Lolita movie than the costumes in the Lolita remake.
And that's probably by circumstances that they're like, everyone's going to think we're just redoing The Crush because people are dumb. And even though the movie's titled Lolita, oh, this is like The Crush.
Or The Crush was rushed into production to beat Lolita, so therefore Lolita knew they had to do something to differentiate themselves. I'm sure there was some sort of
there's definitely something like that. Yeah, it's I don't know. Do we want to actually try to find silver linings to this? Kurtwood Smith.
I mean,
Alicia's
great. She's amazing.
More like Silverstone Playback because Alicia. I would say and honestly, she's actually like, I think she's good in it. I think a lot of the performances aren't awful. Like Amber Benson has a very
and it's weird.
I'm scared thing, and it's good. It works.
It's funny with Alicia Silverstone because it's like I can see the beginnings of what will be Cher Horowitz, like in the performance and in like her style and all of that. Like, not that I think this movie influenced that, but it's just like knowing that this came first, like you can start to see that she's on that path. And yeah, she's definitely enjoyable in it. And I liked the stuff where early on when she was like fixing his paper, and when she was scolding the age appropriate girlfriend on how wasps act. And I do love the line of like, she knows things, like things about wasps, like that, the reveal that we get later. But I liked that. I liked that she was a smart character, and I liked the way that she played that. And I thought there was some interesting stuff, in especially early on. And then she's a different person in the third act that comes out of nowhere. But the first act character of Adrian was an interesting character, I thought, and I liked the way that she played her.
No, and you could definitely tell that Alicia Silverstone was going to be an it girl for the next however many years. That like it was, because right after this, the Aerosmith videos hit, and then Clueless, and then everything all sort of at once. And like she was the mid '90s, I think, in a lot of ways, and it definitely like the early versions of that are here. But yeah, like I like Kurtwood Smith. He, I think, collected a paycheck a little bit, but
100%.
I don't think he was bringing his RoboCop A game, but like he's great, and he's one of the all-time great TV dads, and I'm happy to see him whenever he's in anything. So that always makes me happy.
Can I plug?
And I will fight anyone that says he's not. Oh, go ahead.
No, who doesn't? Who is there? Anybody who doesn't like him? Come on.
Not that I want to know.
Be. No.
Monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Monsters. The other thing I was just going to say is the complexity of specifically, because this like is so firmly lodged in the like Lolita universe. Like it's so directly referencing it and aware of it that I think if you are like interested in at all in like this topic, and this topic as this like third rail thing where there's always this sort of question of like, can we do this? Can we make this movie? Can we write this book? Can it be done? It's flopped. It's been censored. It's been banned, blah, 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 which of course is partially to make it like more titillating. But Jamie Loftus did a great podcast series called the Lolita Podcast. Because she's actually, if you're not familiar with her work, she has the Bechdel Cast, and she also has a couple other like sort of short run podcasts that she's done. She's just a very smart, funny, thoughtful person. And as like a smart, cool woman feminist, she loves the actual original book, Lolita, and feels like it's quite misunderstood. And whether or not you agree with that, I think is kind of irrelevant to... she just does a really good dive both on the book itself, but also on like all of the ways that it's sort of like spiderwebbed out through our culture and how we like do and don't kind of like correctly process it. So I would just say that like if this topic is of interest to you at all, I highly recommend the podcast.
And if the topic isn't of interest to you at all, she has a great book about hot dogs as well.
She does have a great book about hot dogs.
It's true.
The thing that I tell people whenever I recommend that book is I'll be like, you know how like sometimes you'll get pitched a book and you'll be like, well, it's called Raw Dog and you think it's about hot dogs, but of course he's really unpacking like the American relationship with, and it's like, no. This book is really about hot dogs.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is. And it's very well researched. And won me over because she talked about Ben's Chili Bowl, which is the best half smokes in DC, which made me happy as well. So those are all plugs for her as well.
Yes.
We're just a Jamie Loftus fan club here.
Yeah. That's what we're starting.
Let's just do that from now on. Forget these
I think
movies.
that's a better use.
Let's just fan out over Jamie Loftus.
Who knew this whole time, Andy?
I can't believe you guys do this all the time. Watch all.
No, that's what I was going to
say.
Yeah, who knew that we could have just done stuff we liked and had a positive podcast that wasn't slowly breaking our brains with terrible movies. That's probably true.
I was like, I can't believe you guys picked a movie that had me wishing I was watching the aborted baby talk to Marilyn Monroe and Blonde again.
Oh, God.
How would you rank, if you had to rank your 3 movie appearances on here?
Well, Cruella is obviously number 1 because it's actually, I think, a good movie and falsely maligned only from mostly the headlines, like the trailer, because everybody was like laughing at the origin story, but Cruella is actually a total delight. Blonde is second, but it's miles away.
Yes.
And then this is third, and I will say, I think Blonde is more troubling because it got so much buzz that it got to be sort of like positioned as this prestige thing. And I think that upsets, like that feels more problematic and like this for humans. This movie is like universally panned. Like I haven't seen a single person who likes this movie. So I'm less worried about society.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this is doing less damage.
Yeah, I would say that if I had to, out of this or Blonde, watch it again, I don't think I could watch Blonde again.
Agreed. Blonde is like 5 hours long.
Well, for that reason, for a lot of reasons, that I don't think I could do that again.
Also, you know what? Look, we were pretty thin on silver linings this week. So we said Alicia Silverstone and Kurtwood Smith, but also the runtime, as always. Like
about 90. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. No wasted time in The Crush for sure. But
except for the entire 90 minutes watching it.
Well, yes, for sure. But I think we did it.
Yeah, I think we did. I think if anything, the silver linings being the friends we made along the way, we got to talk about some really interesting topics and got to hopefully steer some people into the direction of some really good academia about some topics that are often misunderstood. So I think that that's a really important thing. And it's always great to have Sophie on. Like that's always amazing.
And if you're a regular person who is listening to this show and you need some styling, I believe, Sophie, you can help them with that.
Isn't that what you do?
You could be an irregular person as well. I just don't want you to think that you have to be famous to work with me. You don't.
Yes.
But you could be. Don't let that stop you either.
Yeah.
Please.
But do you want to tell people how best to find you and the work that you do?
Yes. They can find me at Sophie Strauss Styling on Instagram or on TikTok. You can also find me at sophiestraussstyling.com. There's probably more S's in that than you think. If it's more than you think, you're probably right.
And you're just a good follow on Instagram, too. There's also some very soothing voiceover type videos that you do as well. For people that are stressed out these days and might want someone to calmly explain something to them, there's a lot of that good content as well. And
there's also stuff to get the ire up that you post that you're like, yeah, we should be mad about these things.
It's a good mix.
I'll waggle my fist at the sky.
It's a little bit of everything for everyone.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, it is. So definitely. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, as always, thank you so much for doing this. And I'm sorry in equal measures.
Yes, thank you. We're sorry again.
Yeah. Do you guys like message your friends to be on and they're like, oh no, not again. What garbage do I have to watch now?
So I hate to say we've punished you the worst.
You do get I don't know why that happens.
Is that true?
not intentionally, but I do feel like you've gotten. I mean, again, Cruella was good, and I think for this podcast,
But
Cruella is a
picked
masterpiece.
Cruella.
Truly,
I
I know.
picked
Yeah,
Cruella.
Well, so we have a friend who has a weird fascination with Zack Snyder films. So I don't think that they dislike watching them, as painful as they can be to watch. But I don't know, like Blonde in this, like, we're sorry.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. I'm going to make you guys watch like Love Guru or something next.
oh,
That I don't know that you could get. I don't know that you will ever actually get even with us because one, I think you're too kind.
yeah,
Like first and foremost, you're
The
too
bad
good
thing
a
is that
human being.
I have to watch it too.
right. That's the thing is, like, Andy and I have worn ourselves down, so we can watch anything.
Yeah, we're so profoundly broken by the work we've done on this podcast that it's just another day at the office for us.
Silver Linings Playback is a production of HoboTrashcan.com. If you enjoyed the show, please rate or review it on Apple Podcasts. Hear more great shows on the Peak Sloth Podcast Network.